I moved into the basement apartment on a Friday in February. I'd taken it sight unseen, beyond a few photos online because I needed something fast and the price was low enough that I could actually breathe for a few months while I got settled into the new city. The building was a converted older home with 3 units, mine in the basement and 2 above it. The landlord lived directly upstairs in the middle unit. His name was Jerry. He met me at the door on move-in day with a handshake and a spare key and a list of building rules typed out on a single sheet of paper and laminated, which should have told me something about the kind of man he was, but I was tired from the drive and not paying close enough attention. He was in his mid-60s, average height, slim with close cropped gray hair and small pale eyes that were always slightly more focused than the situation called for. Friendly in a way I couldn't find any fault with specifically, but that never quite felt warm. He helped me carry 2 boxes and without being asked, and then stood in my living room for a few minutes longer than necessary, making conversation before I got him out. The apartment itself was fine. Low ceilings, small windows up near ground level, and a little dark even during the day, but clean and functional. I set up my stuff over the weekend and started work Monday and told myself I'd made a reasonable decision. The first thing I noticed was the schedule thing. About 2 weeks in, I was heading out for work and Jerry was coming down the stairs from his unit at the same moment, which I thought was a coincidence. Then it happened 3 days in a row and I started paying attention. He seemed to always be in the shared entryway or the parking lot or the laundry room at the exact times I was coming or going. Not every time, but enough that I started clocking it. He'd make small talk and how work was going and mention something about the building. Nothing inappropriate, just always there. Then he started knowing things. Small things at first. He asked one morning how the Thai place was and I hadn't told him I'd ordered Thai the night before. He mentioned once that I sounded like I had a rough call and I had a difficult work call that had upset me and I'd taken it in my bedroom with the door closed and my voice pretty low. He asked me how my back was doing after I'd spent a Saturday moving furniture around. A Saturday he wasn't home for. A Saturday I hadn't spoken to him out at all. I told myself old building and thin floors and walls, so I told myself he was just perceptive. I also told myself I was being paranoid and that a nosy landlord was annoying, but not a reason to break at least 2 months in. I was very good at explaining these things away back then. I found the hole on a Wednesday night in April. I'd been lying in bed reading and the lamp on my nightstand was throwing light up at the ceiling at an angle it didn't usually hit, and something in the corner caught my eye. I got up and stood under it and looked. A small dark circle, maybe the diameter of a pencil, in the corner where the ceiling met the wall. I got my phone's flashlight and stood on the bed and looked directly into it. There was a lens inside it. I stood there on my bed for a long moment just breathing. Then I got down and got a piece of black electrical tape from my desk drawer and covered it completely and pressed it flat and went to bed. I didn't sleep. I lay there in the dark listening to the sounds of the building and thinking about every conversation Jerry and I ever had and recontextualizing all of it and feeling sick. I woke up at 7 and the first thing I did was look at the ceiling. The tape was gone. I got up and walked to the corner and looked up. The hole was there, same size, same position, but the ceiling around it was slightly different. Fresh paint, matched perfectly to the existing color, feathered out around the hole so it blended. Done carefully, done by somebody who knew what they were doing. Done while I was asleep in the bed 6 feet away. I stood in my bedroom in the early morning and understood very clearly that whatever this was, it was not something I could rationalize anymore. I didn't confront him. I want to be clear about that choice because looking back, I think it's the reason I'm here to write this. Instead, I went to a hardware store before work and bought a small Wi-Fi camera, the kind people use for pet monitoring, and set it up on my bookshelf, pointed directly at the hole in the ceiling before I left for work. I angled it so it looked like it was just sitting there among my books. I reviewed the footage on my lunch break. At 11:08 in the morning, I think, 2 hours after I left, my bedroom door opened. Jerry walked in with a key. He was carrying a small paint kit and a roll of tape. He walked directly to the corner without looking around, like he'd been there 100 times, peeled something off the ceiling that I couldn't make out from the camera angle, touched up the area around the hole for about 4 minutes, packed up his kit, and turned to leave. Then he stopped. He turned back toward the room and stood at the foot of my bed and looked at it. He just stood there with his hands at his sides looking at my unmade bed in the empty apartment. I watched the timestamp count upward. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3. For 4 minutes and 18 seconds, he stood at the foot of my bed looking at it before he finally walked out and pulled the door shut behind him. I sat in my car in the work parking lot for a long time after watching that. I knew I needed to go to the police. I also knew what I had so far. A landlord who entered my apartment, which was a violation but not necessarily criminal on its own, without more context, and a hole in my ceiling that I couldn't yet prove he put there. I needed more, so that night when I watched from my window and saw Jerry's car pull up out of the lot at 8 p.m., I took the emergency spare key he'd given me on move-in day and I went upstairs. His apartment was a mirror image of mine in layout but felt nothing like it. The living room was sparse and impersonal. No photos, nor warmth at all, just furniture arranged with a kind of clinical precision. The kitchen was the same, and I moved quickly, checking rooms, telling myself I'd look for 10 minutes or so and leave. The back bedroom door was padlocked from the outside. A padlock on the outside of an interior bedroom door in a man's own apartment. I stood in the hallway looking at it and felt the particular cold that comes not from temperature, but from understanding something you can't take back. I went back to my apartment and got my bolt cutters from the storage closet where I kept my bike gear. I went back upstairs and cut the lock. Opened the door and found the light switch and stood in the doorway for a long moment before I could make myself go in. The room had no furniture. What it had instead, covering every wall floor to ceiling, was a system. Multiple monitors on a folding table against the far wall are showing live feeds. The building entryway, the laundry room, the parking lot, and the hallway outside my door. Feeds from cameras I had never seen and couldn't account for. The walls themselves were covered in printed photographs and documents, organized by section, each section separated by strips of blue painter's tape. 6 sections in total. 6 different people and 6 different sets of photos and notes and printed records. Some of the photos were taken through windows. Some were taken inside apartments, from angles that could have only come from hidden cameras. Each section had a name written at the top in neat black letters, and below the name, a printed schedule, financial records pulled from the mail or documents, relationship information, and family contacts. Years of accumulated detail on each person, built slowly and methodically, the way you'd build a case file. 4 of the 6 sections had a thick red diagonal line drawn through them from corner to corner. Those people were gone. I found out a year later that 2 of them had simply moved away and could be accounted for. The other 2 are still listed as open missing persons cases in 2 different counties. I didn't know that while standing in that room. I just knew the red lines felt like something being closed. My section was on the wall directly facing the door. The largest section, the most recent, the most densely covered. Months of photographs, schedules, and notes written in small, precise handwriting about my habits and patterns and routines. Photos taken through my bedroom window, my living room window, and inside my apartment from camera angles I still can't fully account for. In the center of my section, pinned at eye level, was a photograph of me asleep in my bed, taken the previous night, while my camera was pointed at the ceiling, while I was lying 6 feet away in the dark. At the bottom of my section, written directly on the wall in black marker, was a date, 3 days from that night. I called 911 from the street, sat in the curb across from the building with my phone and my bolt cutters and waited. They arrested Jerry 2 hours later coming back to the building. His name wasn't even Jerry. I'm not going to put his real name here, but it just wasn't Jerry. Know that. And the identity he'd used to purchase the building was constructed. He'd done this before. 2 other properties, 2 other cities, and the same setup in a back room each time. The detective who called me a week later was careful with what she shared but told me enough. She told me they found 19 cameras in my apartment. Not 1, 19, placed in every room over a period of months. Systematically, 1 by 1, I'd found one. I had been living for weeks thinking I'd found the thing, and there were 18 others I never knew about. I asked about the date on the wall. She was quiet for a moment and then said they were looking into it. She never called me back about that specifically. I've stopped expecting her to. And no, I don't live there anymore. I don't live in a basement anymore. Don't think I ever will again. I sleep with 2 cameras of my own in my bedroom now, and I check the footage every morning before I do anything else. I think about those 4 minutes at the foot of my bed more than anything. More than the cameras, more than the room upstairs, more than the date on the wall. Just a man standing alone in a stranger's empty apartment, staring at an unmade bed for 4 minutes in complete silence. I don't know what he was thinking about. I think that's the part I'm most grateful not to know.